So I need a little help. What comes after season one, but before season two? John Henry? Gil Lebreton? Anyone? Ziggy?
How about we try best of episode? Isn't that what we were talking about?
That's a good call. PressBox DFW Live. I am Richie Witt, usually alongside two venerable Metroplex sports writers named Gil Lebreton and John Henry. But as you can see, I've upgraded. I went to the platinum package. Actually, those two knuckleheads, I think Gil is summering up in Canada, I believe. I'm not sure John Henry where he is, probably in a bar somewhere or maybe at an estate sale, collecting some more busts of old presidents. But I thought it would be a good week before we start season two next week, and we ended season one last week. How about a best of? Let's reflect on the first 13 episodes of PressBox DFW Live. Let's do that today. And first of all, just kind of a thank you to the viewers and the listeners, the readers of PressBoxDFW.com, and the viewers here to PressBox DFW Live. Our little ventures are growing. The website readership is up. Subscribers are way up. That thing is going to work. It's got some teeth. We're steaming full ahead with the print version, if you will, the virtual print version. This little vodcast that we were doing, we decided, you know what, let's have a podcast to supplement the website. And then, we're not really good looking at all, but let's try to add some video to that and call it a vodcast. So we did. We thought it might be a one-off, maybe a two-off. And here we are doing a best of after 13 episodes. So we debuted with 288 viewers. Back in March, I believe we debuted. And last two episodes, 5,000 and 6,000 viewers across all of our platforms. So thank you very much for all your listening and sharing and watching and also reading at PressBoxDFW.com. So let's kind of review, Ziggy, our first season. We've had a lot of guests. And again, we launched, I believe, early March. On March 12th, we had my old friend Wally Lynn was our first guest. And just to kind of recap, Wally and I have been friends since the early 90s, covering the Cowboys out at Valley Ranch. And he was one of Mark Cuban's first hires at broadcast.com, which got bought up by Yahoo. He was a multimillionaire on paper and in stock. And life happened. I mean, he got divorced and he lost a lot of his stock, and then his career went in the tank. And next thing you know, he's drinking and things just went really downhill. Well, found Wally Lynn. He was alive and he sounded kind of well. And I asked him, Wally Lynn, old time friend in DFW, sports. He had shows here forever, radio shows here forever, a previous sports icon. How did you go from homeless to back on your feet? Because the last time we talked, you were a little sluggish, you were a little slow, you had the smell of somebody who was sleeping on a baseball field, which you were. You sound like the old Wally. You don't have to tell us where you are, but what are you doing that's got you reinvigorated?
Well, here's what I'm doing. I am a communications director for a nonprofit. I can tell you it's in Texas.
Wow.
And the basics of it are this. It helps people recovering from alcohol and drug addiction. And the program is heavy on teaching the word. And that's something that has pretty much kicked in with me pretty deeply over the last, I guess, 4 or 5 months or so. And through a bit of a bizarre string of circumstances, I ended up here in November of last year And what started as a residency has led to this position. And like I said, there's so many things for me to work on that it's hard for me to put the pen down and say, okay, what do I do next?
Wally,
Yeah, if you read my story in the Dallas Observer about Wally Lynn and his demise, you know how the depths of his depression and his darkness were. I mean, literally, passed out on the floor in a pile of beer cans and had to be taken to the hospital a couple times. To hear him sound that good, and that was in March, he's continued that. I'm now in touch with him on a regular basis. It's just one of the really uplifting things. I'm glad we had him as our first guest on PressBox DFW Live. And then it kind of went downhill. We had on Matt Mosley. Ziggy, how did Matt treat our show? Do you think he was reverent enough?
2 weeks in a row. Didn't one time he actually came in as we were already broadcasting? I'm pretty sure.
He somehow took the wrong turn to Luna Road and showed up with his sunglasses as an ego and is 5 minutes late. But we love Matt Mosley. He of course, he's a featured columnist at PressBoxDFW.com. That's when John Henry was out gallivanting, I believe, in Key West with his snooty boots. So we had Matt Mosley bring the show down for a couple of weeks, and then we went back up with a baseball opening day, and we had on longtime Rangers voice Chuck Morgan. We asked him, of course, opening day memories because it was the last year of Globe Life Park, and what's his favorite moment from that park, Chuck Morgan. DFW Live. So my favorite memory of Globe Life Park has to be 2010, sitting in the outfield. Feliz strikes out A-Rod, clinches the Rangers' first World Series appearance in franchise history. Chuck, what goes through your mind? You've been doing it for 25 years in this park. What's the moment or moments that stick out in your mind?
well, that's the same. It's the same one, and I said something to TV guys yesterday that I've run out of confetti for a long time. I kept confetti from that particular game that blew into my booth after that with that celebration. And all of that has been either blown away or cleaned up by the cleanup folks, and I need more confetti. But that is the biggest moment for me. I mean, when you've invested as much emotion and passion and hard work into this franchise as I have, to do something like that, that's pretty special. I just wish in 11 we could have carried it just a little further. But that one, and then the first game ever in this park with the national anthem, one of the most incredible national anthems.
That was good old Chuck Morgan. Of course, he was talking about the anthem there when we cut it off. That was good editing by Richie Witt. Yours truly, you're welcome. He was talking about Van Cliburn when he sang the national anthem to open up Globe Life Park back in '94, and now it's closing. Thanks to Chuck Morgan for being on. He gave us some baseball goosebumps that day. We kept with the Chuck theme with our next guest here on PressBox DFW Live. Chuck Cooperstein stopped in. Chuck Morgan, of course, the longtime voice of the Rangers. Morgan, the Rangers. Chuck Cooperstein, longtime voice of your Mavs. And this was really cool for me because I covered Dirk Nowitzki when he got to town as a 19-year-old kid and saw most of his 32,000 points in the NBA. And we were getting ready for Dirk's final home game. This was on April 9th. And Chuck Cooperstein kind of gave us a tease of expect something special.
Jason Terry's going to be there because he's going to be doing radio with me tonight in the second quarter, which is going to be fun.
That'll be cool.
Beyond that, I don't know, how many are going. I know Sean Marion was trying to get here, but he may have had, something else in the way that had been previously scheduled. So I don't know where that is. I do know. There are going to be, videos and tributes, throughout the course of the game. I do know that everybody needs to be around the channel, whether it be TV or radio, or certainly the 20,000 people who are in the arena. You're not going anywhere when the final horn sounds.
Right.
That's really when the action begins. And it's going to be dramatic and emotional, and there's going to be some huge surprises. From people walking out on the floor that you might not have expected to see.
Wow, good tease. Leave it at that. Good tease indeed, Chuck Cooperstein. Boy, did he nail that, Ziggy. I mean, that he was teasing people you won't expect, people you need to stay in your seat for, Dirk's final home game, then the fun starts. And remember, out pops Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, Larry friggin' Bird, Sean Kemp, and Detlef Schrempf. Chuck Cooperstein gave us a little crystal basketball there, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that was and that moment, it was such a great moment to have someone that so basically represents all of DFW sports, who is like a paragon of humanity and hubris, really.
Yep.
To be sent off that way, I thought that was really appropriate. I thought it was truly special.
It was a great send-off and a great tease by Chuck Cooperstein. He nailed it. We were watching, and it was indeed special. Other guests we've had on the show, we had TCU football coach Gary Patterson, who basically read us his two-deep roster, I believe.
Yeah, it was a lot more in-depth interview than I thought we
He's
were
a
going to get into.
football coach. What do you want him to do, huh? I mean, he was X's and O's. He was chalk-talking us in late April when their season doesn't start till September. Thanks to Gary Patterson, also a Season 1 guest here on PressBox DFW Live. April 23rd was also very, very cool because we're getting ready for the NFL Draft. And I said, who better to get on for the Cowboys voice? We've had the Rangers voice, Chuck Morgan. We had the Mavericks voice, Chuck Cooperstein. Who says Dallas Cowboys more than Brad Sham? We had our old friend on. And as Chuck kind of gave us a hint of what was to come with Mavericks and Dirk's finale, Brad Sham got on here on PressBox DFW Live, and he basically told you who the Cowboys are going to draft. But if it's going to be a successful draft, the Cowboys are going to get blank. What do you want?
I want a defensive tackle, and I think a safety would be good. And I won't reach for any of them because on Friday, if they don't draft on Thursday, and I don't think they will, then even on Friday, in my opinion, if you reach, the only way I'm reaching is if the best player on my board is a quarterback. Then I'm going to go to the next player. If the best player on my board is either a linebacker or an offensive lineman, I'm looking at how big the gap is between that player and the next best player who isn't one of those things. And I think that you just still have to take the best football player available. If they're fortunate, on Friday, that guy, in my opinion, would be a safety or a defensive tackle. And I still think defensive tackle is the biggest need they have.
And Brad Sham, you forecast it, my man. He says the Cowboys should draft a defensive lineman, and sure enough, they take Tristan Hill of Central Florida. Now, we can debate whether they reached or not. That's to be continued. But Brad Sham telling us Cowboys are going to draft a defensive lineman, and a couple days later, that's exactly what they did. The next week, April 30th, here on PressBox DFW Live, we turned into hockey experts because the Stars made a deep run and an exciting run into the playoffs, and we had on our old friend, former Star Telegram co-worker, Mike Heika was on, and we talked about the Stars and X's and O's and hockey and all that, but what we wanted to know was American Airlines Center or Reunion Arena? What do you got, Mike?
You've seen both arenas. Bigger home ice advantage, Reunion Arena, where our backdrop is today, yep, or American Airlines Center.
Definitely Reunion Arena. It was totally so fantastic. It's great having nice buildings and everything. These things are huge. They're convenient. You're not packed into the press box like sardines like they were at Reunion.
Right.
But that the low ceiling and the energy of the fans, and you have to go back and say those are really good teams too. So when you have a good team like that, a consistently good team year after year after year, it builds the energy of the fans up. But yeah, the American Airlines Center has had some really good crowds. But Reunion Arena was just amazing back in the day.
It's just kind of sanitized. It is kind of sanitized, Richie Witt. Good point by you. The old barn, if you will, in hockey parlance, at Reunion Arena, much better place than the AAC. Thanks to Mike Heika joining us back on April 30th here on PressBox DFW Live. Then we had our old friend Newey Scruggs on, of course, long-time Channel 5 sports anchor and my former radio partner. And then just last week, we went even bigger. We had on Rangers general manager John Daniels, who Me and him have had our ups and downs, and I've been in his doghouse, and I've been out of it. So I respect him. When he has a problem with me, he tells me, and when he does something right, I kind of tell him. And he's done something right with Hunter Pence. And I asked John Daniels, how do you grab a guy off the junk pile and make a guy who's going to make the All-Star team?
Well, I don't want to say we sat there and forecast that he'd be this productive.
Come on, go ahead.
We had a number of guys. Ross Fenstermaker, who's our pro scouting director, pushed for him. I felt like reading about the swing change stuff and obviously knowing the makeup, felt like even if the swing change didn't take to this degree, or the offensive changes didn't take quite this degree, that he could have a big influence on a young group from a preparation standpoint, a mental standpoint, and he's a pro, he's a winner. So he'd been kind of pushing for him this winter, and then Scott Littlefield, one of our scouts, went down and saw him in winter ball, and just the life in the body, the way he played, the energy. I mean, for a 36-year-old, 10, 12-year veteran who's won multiple World Series to go down and play winter ball, you just don't see that. That really speaks to like true love of the game, passion for the game. And then Woody also kind of pushed for him too. Just had seen him across the diamond there with the Giants Dodgers games and knew what he could bring to the clubhouse and was an element that he was looking for. So it just made a lot of sense. And then he comes out in spring training, and he obviously was great. We'd have our meetings in camp, and just about everybody universally was excited about him. And I remember at one point, the room was just overwhelmingly pro Hunter. And I kind of raised the point, like, hey, there's no doubt that he can help us, from a clubhouse standpoint with our young players. But you guys ultimately believe he's going to hit. And I think, to be fair, I think everyone said, listen, like there's life in the body. He's strong. He's quick. He's working his butt off. And, you're going to have to wait and see how it does against, in-season big league pitching. But the ingredients were there. And, definitely a guy that I'm glad we gave that up.
So we gave you Wally Lynn, Matt Mosley, Chuck Morgan, Chuck Cooperstein, Gary Patterson, Brad Sham, Mike Heika, Newey Scruggs, and John Daniels. Ziggy, producer, if I may say so, that's not a bad first year for a little enterprise, is it?
The term murderer's row gets thrown around quite a bit.
We set the bar probably too high for season 2, but we'll still try to keep doing some in-depth interviews that make some news and entertain you here on PressBox DFW Live. Give you some unique sports nuggets because you come here to learn something. You also come here to be entertained. And speaking of being entertained, we're a trio of total dorks. Gil Leberton, John Henry, Richie Witt, we all have our quirks. And we've all made some entertaining gaffes, shall we say, in season 1. Let's turn to the lighter side of season 1, the lighter side of PressBox DFW Live, and we'll start out with Gil's segment, which is called the pregame meal. It turns out one of the funniest people on this show is Gil Leberton's nun. You heard me. This pregame meal sponsored by Stewie Griffin, filling in for Gil Leberton. Oh my God. That was a really funny idea by somebody. I don't know who. So back in May, we were talking about Stars and Blues because they were about to play Game 7 of their NHL playoff series. And the topic was favorite Game 7s in the history of DFW sports. And we realized there weren't that many. And the ones that had been, I think there was only one DFW team that had won a Game 7 on the road, and that was the Mavericks, beating the Spurs back in 2006. But that wasn't the funny part. That was the informational part. The funny part was Gil describing how he once upon a time listened to a Game 7.
That I actually listened to this game.
Did you really?
In the classroom on a little transistor radio with an earphone. Sister, can't even remember which one, Sister Eusebia let us listen to the game there because she knew that, as long as we had our little earphone in, we could listen to it. But we had to tell everybody what was
I mean,
happening.
I don't mean this as any offense. But they really had transistor radios with earpieces in 1960?
Yes,
I mean,
they did.
Does that surprise you?
Yes, they did.
I
Come
mean,
on.
I didn't know. I really didn't.
We
It's a
had
revolutionary time.
We had indoor plumbing too.
That I heard rumors about. But I didn't know you could do that.
So what was it like to personally know Marconi, Gil?
Okay, Ziggy, so you're very technically savvy. Did you know that in 1960 they had transistor radios with earplugs? No, mind you.
It's not the transistor radio that's of like a portable size. It's the earphones that really got. I did not for the life of me. But I guess portability, like you had earphones for recording studios and everything. But I don't know. Can you imagine trying to hide it though? Like that's why he had to do it in front of the class.
I just picture Gil Leberton at however old he was, sitting in Sister Eusebia's class with his transistor radio and a giant pair of Beats headphones on, listening to Bill Mazeroski and the Yankees and the Pirates in the '60 World Series.
Oh my goodness!
But that's not where that segment really turned. Where it turned is we were talking to John Henry, was leading a segment about John Football's ex-girlfriend cheating in a half marathon, and Gil's phone had the audacity to ring. It was an accident, or did she knowingly cut?
I think
Because Instagram models are not known for their,
Yeah, there could have been pilot error.
navigation ability.
There could have been some pilot error involved.
she didn't have her GPS, I'm sure. on her
Could have
phone.
been an oops or a damn it.
But-
yeah, which one was it?
Now we'll go ahead, Gil.
Unless but still, didn't she see the many thousand? Oh, this is great. Didn't she?
That could
see
be
the
her on the
many-
phone.
Could be her on the phone.
thousands
That could be her, or it could be that could be
be
the
Johnny.
nun. It could be the nun saying, "Turn down your transistor."
True.
Very
Breeze.
proud of you, Gil.
Sister Eusebian calling it. Y'all are terrible.
Oh my God!
So where were we?
Well, I can
Go
tell
ahead.
you that Bree went to Instagram, which is where she always goes for.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Okay, I was laughing and I almost lost it. And I was thinking, is Ziggy going to yank this back on the track? And then when I went back and listened, you were howling as much as we were.
Oh yeah, yes, that was so great.
Sister Eusebia calling in and saying, "Gil, we're really proud of you." Oh, Gil.
You've made it.
Yeah, Gil is a treasure, and so is John Henry. This is a funny dude. The more you hang around John Henry, the more he's very understated, but he's very smart, and he's got these zinger one-liners. He's not over the top. And he hosts a segment here on PressBox DFW Live, and we call it Double Drivel. And once upon a time, an episode, John Henry delivered breaking news about a legendary president. You're not going to believe what he broke. It's going to get me every time. Now, I wonder when they go watch this, and you know they will John be mad that he's not Stewie, and will Gil be mad that he's not Albert? I don't know. Did we typecast these guys right properly?
I think that they will. I think they will both be angry, but not for the reasons that we think.
You're probably right. Yeah. My apologies to Stewie and Albert for sitting in for a couple of goofballs. All right, so the Double Drivel is John Henry's segment each week here on PressBox DFW Live. And usually he's a fancy sponsor with a hat, but don't have the hat or the sponsor today. So get your lawn cut at
Hunt's Lawn
There you go,
Service.
Hunt's Lawn Service. Of course, thank you, sir.
Call Hunt's Lawn Service for all your lawn care needs.
All right, don't give him too much payola. So as I said, John's a quirky dude. He's also a hell of a writer, and he knows everything about the Metroplex. He's also a fascinating guy off the air because he goes to estate sales and he purchases what we would consider crap, like a bust of, I don't know, Dwight Eisenhower and LBJ and Reagan and Carter and George Walker Bush, Douglas MacArthur. I think he's brought in all 45 presidents at this point. He also brought in a guy in Dallas with one of the most famous rifles to ever fire a bullet. This was very uncomfortable.
Roger Staubach?
No.
Mamas.
You know, I'm glad you're back, John Henry, because Matt Mosley just butchered double dribble.
I noticed that last week.
You did.
Guy's
You
an
did
amateur.
notice it.
Guy's
I was
an
actually
amateur.
kidding, but okay.
Guy's an amateur.
So first of all, explain to me. You went to New York for the TCU's NIT.
I did.
Then you went to
The city
Key
that never
West.
sleeps.
You went to Key West just with buddies, and then all you brought back was Lee Harvey.
Lee Oswald.
Like, what happened to LBJ and all the other?
You got lost along the way.
Did the gun automatically discharge? And we only got one guy. Like, what's going on?
I did lose a little bit of LBJ's nose when I brought him in last week.
You did?
Yes, chipped on the car leaving thing, but that's all right.
That's karma.
He had
Somehow.
he's got there's a lot of taint on LBJ. Bad nose.
There's a lot of what on it.
A lot of yeah.
I didn't know. Every time I hear that, I don't think I heard it right. He said there is a lot of taint on LBJ. Is this breaking news, Ziggy? Do we need to revise the history books?
Well, there is that famous phone call he had with his tailor.
Oh, John Henry, the historian / comedian of PressBox DFW Live, there with breaking news. We need to get the LBJ Presidential Library to edit some of the books because apparently he had some taint on him. All right, and then it comes to yours truly, and I host a segment called Wits End, and I've been accused of having a rather healthy ego in my day, but boy, the guy with the big ego made a huge gaffe. Okay, good. I thought you were going to cut to some other stuffed edifice that I didn't know about. Wits End. It's my weekly segment here on PressBox DFW Live, and actually it's been around in some form, print or podcast or TV or radio, since, golly, the late 90s I started this thing at the Star Telegram. In Wits End one day, probably April, right around the NFL draft, we interviewed Brad Sham. And, of course, we heard that a little bit earlier. He gave us some breaking news. So it was a really good interview, and somehow that good interview turned bad because it got me all sorts of discombobulated with the order of the show that I freaking host.
Good to talk to you.
All right, there's the iconic voice of the Dallas Cowboys, Brad Sham. I love Brad. He'll give you his opinion, not just the facts.
Yeah, it's not the House.
It's
It's not the House opinion.
That's why he's been around for 41 years. He's fantastic. All right, PressBox DFW Live. Watch us right here weekly and read our writing daily at PressBoxDFW.com. Next up, what are we doing? Oh, we're doing the crazy names. These guys, you're telling me, John Henry, actually got drafted in the NFL, including the Duke. Hey, welcome to Double Dribble, everybody. Here's your open.
So
Hey, welcome to Double Dribble, everybody. Here's your open. This open brought to you by What the What? Who are these guys? And that looks like Davey. Okay. So somehow or some other radio professional, media veteran for 33 years got discombobulated. I thought we were doing Double Dribble, which always, of course, he comes after a pregame meal. And John Henry was like, I guess I go now? And, of course, I was so cocky, I thought Ziggy's screwing up back there. What was your thought process as I was inventing dead air?
While we were getting this episode ready, you asked me if there was anything I wanted to include, and this is the only thing I asked for.
Thank you for that.
Because my immediate thought was, I'm going to get fired. That was immediate.
I mean, I really thought somehow you'd fallen asleep at the wheel, and that, of course, I was right. And it's double. And then halfway through the segment, that John Henry was like, "I guess I go now." I think everybody I think I was the last person to realize my mistake, but I think I did finally fess up to it.
Gallo.
We're going to backtrack because somebody jumped ahead and put the Double Dribble out of order this week. I think his name was Richie Witt.
I think so.
Now let's do a little
Wasn't our
pregame
producer.
meal. He's the weirdest. And he's wonderful, but he's one of the weirdest players in baseball, Joey Gallo. Now, I think, Ziggy, just for fun, like once a season, okay, I'm just going to go out of order and just throw up some dead air and make you Were you scrambling? What were you thinking?
So in that moment, I was I was like, oh, did I read the run of show wrong?
I had you convinced for a second.
Yeah, for
good.
a half second. And then what I've done since is I've actually changed how I prepare the show. So if that happens again, I can roll with it immediately.
You Richie proof the rundown.
Yes, as much as I could.
Good call. All right, at the end of the show, we wrap it up with a little thing called the walk-off, and it goes like this. It's time to round the bases and head for home. Let's do this. It is the walk-off where we usually read some email, a question from a viewer or reader. Today, how about just a heartfelt thanks again? We think putting on this show is a little bit informational, a little bit entertaining, and we have a lot of fun, obviously, doing it. We goof around, we talk with Ziggy, we bring in Stewie and Albert Einstein and Gil and all sorts of guests. It's a fun little endeavor for us, but it's y'all's support. Thank you, Stewie. Y'all's support that made season 1 successful and is making season 2 possible starting next week. So next week, same time, same channels, onward and upward with PressBox DFW Live. For Gil Leberton, for John Henry, for Ziggy, for Albert, for Stewie, I'm Richie Witt. See you in the press box for season 2 next week, DFW.